I never thought my only daughter would leave me alone on Christmas, a day I've spent 40 years making magical for our family. When Elaine called claiming her mother-in-law Gloria was desperately ill and needed care, I swallowed my disappointment. I spent Christmas Day surrounded by wrapped presents and cold food, sending worried texts about Gloria's condition. 3 days later, my neighbor showed me what shattered my world. A social media photo of Elaine, her husband, and a perfectly healthy Gloria sipping Mai Tais on a Hawaiian beach on Christmas Day. The orchid lays around their necks mocked everything I believed about my daughter. After raising Elaine alone since she was 8, sacrificing my own dreams for hers, I never imagined she would choose a manipulative woman's vacation demands over her own mother's holiday traditions. I sent just one text that made her world crumble. I've spent 40 Christmases as a widow making sure our holiday traditions stayed alive for my family. For 40 years, I've polished the same silver, hung the same ornaments, and baked the same cookies from scratch because these little constants gave Elaine a sense of stability after her father died. Some might call me old-fashioned, but there's comfort in tradition, in knowing exactly where you'll be and who you'll be with when December rolls around. This year was going to be special. My son Michael couldn't make it from Australia, but Elaine had promised to bring her husband Robert and stay for 3 days. I went all out, transforming my modest two-bedroom house into what my late husband used to call the North Pole's southern branch. I hung the garland he'd bought our first Christmas together, placed our daughter's handmade ornaments on the tree, and spent 2 days baking everything from rum cake to those chocolate peppermint cookies Elaine has loved since she was 6. The phone rang while I was setting out the good china, the set I only use for Christmas dinner. I smiled seeing Elaine's name on the caller ID. "Mom," her voice sounded tight, strained. "I'm so sorry to do this, but we can't make it for Christmas." I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands still clutching the delicate porcelain plate. "What do you mean, is everything okay?" "It's Gloria," she said, referring to Robert's mother. "She's very sick. The doctor thinks it might be her heart this time. Robert is beside himself and she needs someone to take care of her." I tried to hide my disappointment. "Oh dear, that's terrible. Is she in the hospital?" "No, she's at home. She hates hospitals." "The doctor is making house calls, but someone needs to be with her round the clock." I volunteered since Robert is so upset he can barely function. I looked around at my perfectly arranged dining room, the presents wrapped and labeled under the tree, the refrigerator packed with food prepped for our holiday meals. "I understand. Family comes first. I knew you'd understand, Mom. You always do. I'll call you on Christmas, I promise." After we hung up, I sat motionless at the table. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. I considered calling Michael, but what was the point? He couldn't drop everything and fly halfway around the world on 3 days' notice. His wife was expecting their first child, and they were spending Christmas with her family in Sydney. I went through the motions over the next few days. I kept the decorations up because taking them down felt like admitting defeat. On Christmas morning, I woke up early out of habit. The house was silent, no excited chatter, no coffee brewing, no Christmas music playing on the old record player. Just silence. I made myself a small breakfast and tried calling Elaine. She didn't answer but texted back 20 minutes later, "Merry Christmas, Mom. Things crazy here. Gloria not doing well, call you later." I waited all day for that call. I turned on the TV for company and picked at the small turkey breast I'd roasted for myself instead of the 20-pound bird now sitting in my freezer. Around 7 that evening, Elaine texted again. "Sorry couldn't call. Doctor just left. Gloria resting now, love you." I sent back, "Love you too. Tell Gloria I'm praying for her." Then I wrapped up the barely touched food, turned off the Christmas tree lights, and went to bed early. Boxing Day came and went. I called my friend Sheila and accepted her invitation for coffee, grateful to escape my house for a few hours. She asked about Elaine and I explained the situation, feeling a strange need to defend my daughter's absence even though Sheila hadn't questioned it. "That poor woman," Sheila said, referring to Gloria. "Has she been sick long?" "On and off for years," I replied. But Elaine says it's much worse this time. Sheila nodded sympathetically. You must be worried too. It's never easy when parents get older. I murmured agreement, though truthfully, I'd always had my doubts about Gloria's various ailments. They seemed to flare up at convenient times, like when Elaine and Robert were planning trips to see me, or when important events in my life conflicted with Gloria's desires. But I kept those thoughts to myself. After all, who was I to question someone's health issues on the day after Boxing Day? My neighbor Tom stopped by with a tin of his late wife's famous gingerbread cookies. At 72, Tom was still sharp as a tack and had embraced technology with enthusiasm after retiring from teaching. His son worked for a travel company and often posted about exotic destinations. Thought you might like some company, he said as I invited him in. My son David is in Hawaii right now, lucky dog, escaping the winter while the rest of us freeze. That sounds wonderful, I said, making us both tea. I haven't been anywhere warm in years. Tom pulled out his phone. He's been posting the most gorgeous photos. Look at that sunset. Oh, wait till you see who he ran into yesterday. The world is so small sometimes. He handed me his phone and my heart stopped. There on the screen was a photo taken clearly on Christmas Day, judging by the Santa hats. David was posing with Elaine and Robert on a beautiful beach. All three were smiling, tropical drinks in hand. And standing right beside them, looking healthier than I'd seen her in years, was Gloria, wearing a bright floral dress and a lei around her neck. The caption read, "Ran into the Mitchell family enjoying their Christmas in Maui. Small world." My hands began to shake so badly I had to set down the phone before I dropped it. Tom didn't seem to notice as he continued showing me other photos of Hawaiian scenery. Are you sure this was taken on Christmas Day? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Oh yes, David always dates his posts. See the timestamp? That's Christmas afternoon Hawaii time. He said they were having some big luau dinner later. I nodded, unable to speak. While I'd been sitting alone in my empty house worried about Gloria's health, they had all been enjoying a tropical vacation. The text messages, the concern, the entire emergency had been a lie. Tom eventually left, and I sat motionless in my living room, staring at the Christmas tree with its twinkling lights that suddenly seemed to be mocking me. Every ornament, every decoration, every carefully wrapped present still sitting unopened under the tree represented hours of work and love that Elaine had casually discarded for a beach vacation. I picked up my phone and looked at Elaine's last text again. The lie stared back at me, black and white proof of my daughter's betrayal. My finger hovered over the call button, anger and hurt warring inside me. But something stopped me from pressing it. Acting on raw emotion wouldn't help. Instead, I needed time to process what this meant, not just for Christmas, but for our relationship. I sat on my sofa for hours that night. Tom's phone images burned into my memory. The shock had given way to a strange calm, the kind that comes when pain is so deep it momentarily numbs you. I thought about all the Christmases I'd spent alone after Frank died, working 2 jobs to give Elaine a good life, saving every penny to make the holidays special for her. I remembered the Christmas when she was 12, and I'd worked overtime for months to buy her the bicycle she wanted. The memory of her face that morning had kept me going through years of struggle. And now she was sipping Mai Tais in Hawaii while I sat among the remnants of a holiday I'd prepared for a family who had deliberately deceived me. I picked up my phone and opened my photos. There they were, pictures of last Christmas, Elaine and Robert beside the tree, Gloria sitting primly on my couch complaining that my heating was too low for her circulation. I scrolled back further, through birthdays and Easter gatherings, noting how Gloria always seemed to be the center of attention, always had some ailment that required special accommodation. How had I not seen the pattern before? I returned to the text messages from Elaine. The lies seemed so obvious now. My finger hovered over the keyboard for a long time before I typed my response. The orchid lei looks lovely on you. Merry Christmas. I pressed send and immediately blocked her number. Then I turned off my phone completely and went to bed. Morning came with a strange sense of resolve. I showered, dressed, and methodically began taking down the Christmas decorations. Each ornament went back into its box, each strand of garland carefully wound and stored away. I packed up the presents I'd bought for Elaine and Robert, sealing the box with packing tape and pushing it into the back of the hall closet. By noon, there was no sign of Christmas in my house, as if the holiday had never happened. My landline rang several times that day. I let the answering machine pick up, hearing Elaine's increasingly frantic voice. Mom, please pick up. I know you're upset. Please let me explain. Mom, I've been calling your cell phone all day. Are you okay? Please call me back. Mom, I'm really worried now. If you don't call me back in the next hour, I'm going to call the police to check on you. That last one made me pick up. I'm fine, Elaine. No need to bother the police. Mom, thank God, I've been so worried. Why aren't you answering your cell phone? I turned it off. I needed some peace and quiet. Mom, about that text, I can explain. I'm sure you can, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. But I don't want to hear it right now. I'm very tired. Goodbye, Elaine. I hung up before she could respond and unplugged the landline. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and wrote out a plan. I'd spent too many years putting everyone else first. It was time to focus on myself. The next day, I drove to the community center and signed up for 3 classes I'd always wanted to take but never had time for: painting, ballroom dancing, and conversational French. The young woman at the desk seemed surprised when I paid for the entire year up front. Most people start with 1 class to see if they like it, she said. I'm done wasting time, I replied. At my age, you learn to commit. My phone kept buzzing with notifications from numbers I didn't recognize, Elaine trying to reach me from different phones. I deleted them all without reading them. Michael called from Australia, clearly having heard from his sister. Mom, what's going on? Elaine says you won't talk to her. Did she tell you where she spent Christmas? A pause. She mentioned something about Hawaii. Did she mention telling me that Gloria was on her deathbed? Another longer pause. Mom, I'm sure she didn't mean to hurt you. But she did hurt me, Michael, deliberately and unnecessarily. And right now, I need some space to process that. She's really upset, Mom. So am I. After we hung up, I sat down at my computer and did something I'd been avoiding for years, learning how social media worked. Frank had always said I was smarter than I gave myself credit for, and within a few hours, I'd created accounts on several platforms. I found Robert's profile easily enough, and through him, Gloria's. What I discovered made my stomach turn. There were years of posts from Gloria, subtly undermining me, making little digs about my modest home, my simple Christmas traditions, my outdated way of doing things. And among the comments, I found Elaine's responses, sometimes defending me but more often laughing along, adding her own stories that made me sound like a quaint, somewhat pathetic figure. And then I found the Hawaii trip planning posts, dating back 3 months. This hadn't been a last-minute vacation. It had been planned well in advance, with Gloria tagging Elaine and Robert in resort advertisements since before Halloween. I closed the laptop feeling sick. 3 months. For 3 months, my daughter had known she would be spending Christmas in Hawaii, and she'd waited until 3 days before to cancel on me, inventing a medical emergency rather than simply telling the truth. My doorbell rang the next morning. I peered through the peephole to see Elaine standing there looking disheveled and anxious. I didn't open the door. Mom, I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Please talk to me. I stood silently on the other side of the door, my heart pounding. Mom, please, I made a terrible mistake. I should have told you the truth. I was a coward. I remained motionless, scarcely breathing. Fine, she finally said. I'll come back later. But I'm not giving up, Mom. We need to talk about this. She left a gift bag on the porch. After she drove away, I opened the door and brought it inside. It contained a small carved wooden turtle with a note. From Hawaii, with love and deepest regrets. Please call me. I placed the turtle on my mantle and went to my first painting class that afternoon. The instructor, a retired art teacher named Lucinda, had us start with simple still lifes. My pear looked more like a misshapen potato, but for 3 hours I thought about nothing except light and shadow and the weight of the brush in my hand. When Elaine rang my doorbell again that evening, I was in the middle of practicing my French phrases and didn't answer. She left another note under the door, this one longer, full of apologies and explanations. I read it once, then filed it away in a drawer. The time for words had passed. I needed to see actions. The next day, my neighbor Tom stopped by again, looking uncomfortable. Margaret, I feel terrible. David told me the Mitchell family swore him to secrecy about their vacation. Apparently, Gloria organized the whole thing as a surprise Christmas gift. I had no idea I was revealing a secret when I showed you those photos. Don't worry about it, Tom. You did me a favor. It's better to know the truth. He nodded uncertainly. Elaine came by my house this morning. She's very upset. I imagine she is. She asked me to tell you she'll be back tomorrow morning. She's bringing Robert. I thanked him for the information and spent the rest of the day at the mall, buying new clothes for my dance class, comfortable shoes, a few colorful scarves, and a bright red lipstick the makeup counter woman assured me was perfect for my complexion. I hadn't bought anything just for myself in years. It felt both frivolous and necessary. I woke up early the next morning and dressed carefully in one of my new outfits, applying the red lipstick with a steady hand. If I was going to face my daughter and son-in-law, I would do it looking my best. At precisely 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I counted to 30 before opening it. Elaine stood there, her face pale with dark circles under her eyes. Robert lurked behind her, looking everywhere but at me. I stepped back without a word, allowing them to enter. Mom, Elaine began immediately. I am so sorry. I gestured to the living room. Sit down. They perched awkwardly on the edge of the sofa while I took my armchair, the one Frank had bought me for my 50th birthday. I said nothing, just looked at them steadily. The silence grew uncomfortable. Margaret, Robert finally said, what we did was inexcusable. We should have just told you the truth about the trip. Yes, you should have, I agreed, my voice calm. Instead, you lied about Gloria being seriously ill. You let me sit here alone on Christmas Day, worried about her health, while you were all enjoying yourselves on a beach. It was Gloria's idea, Elaine blurted out. She wanted to surprise the whole family with a trip, but she knew you wouldn't want to go. So instead of asking me, you lied. That was your solution. Elaine's eyes filled with tears. I knew you'd be hurt if we went without you. I took the coward's way out. And it never occurred to you to simply decline Gloria's invitation and spend Christmas with your mother as planned. Robert shifted uncomfortably. My mother can be very insistent. She had already booked everything, paid for it all. I see, so my feelings were worth less than a non-refundable hotel booking. That's not what Robert meant, Elaine said quickly. Then what did he mean? I asked. Neither of them had an answer. After another long silence, I stood up. I appreciate you coming by, but I have a dance class to attend. I'll need some time to process all this. Dance class? Elaine looked confused. Since when do you dance? Since 3 days ago. There's a lot you don't know about me, Elaine, now if you'll excuse me. I showed them to the door, ignoring Elaine's attempts to hug me. As they walked to their car, I heard Robert mutter, I told you this wouldn't work. We need to give her time. The dance class was exactly what I needed, physical movement that required complete concentration. The instructor paired me with a gentleman named Walter, a widower with kind eyes and patient hands who guided me through the basic waltz steps without comment when I stumbled. First time dancing? He asked during a break. First time in 45 years, I replied. My husband and I danced at our wedding, but after he died there didn't seem to be much point. Walter nodded. My Marian loved to dance. I come to these classes to feel close to her again. There was something comforting about sharing space with someone who understood grief without needing to discuss it. When the class ended, Walter tipped an imaginary hat and said, Same time next week, Margaret? I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in days. The feeling lasted until I got home and checked my mail. There was a thick envelope from a local law firm. Inside was a letter from Gloria, formally apologizing for the misunderstanding about Christmas and hoping we could all move forward as a family. It was clearly written by a lawyer, cold and impersonal, designed to absolve her of responsibility while appearing conciliatory. I placed it with Elaine's notes in the drawer and went to make dinner. My phone rang. Michael again. Mom, Elaine says you're taking dance classes now. Ballroom dancing, yes, and painting and French lessons. That's great, Mom, really. But Elaine is really upset. She says you barely spoke to her today. What was I supposed to say, Michael? That it's okay they lied to me, that I don't mind being left alone on Christmas Day because Gloria wanted a beach vacation. No, of course not, but she's trying to make amends. Is she, or is she just trying to make herself feel better? There's a difference. After we hung up, I sat down with my French textbook but found it hard to concentrate. My mind kept returning to Gloria's letter. Something about it bothered me beyond the obvious insincerity. I retrieved it from the drawer and read it again, more carefully this time. The wording was revealing. She referred to the alleged illness as a miscommunication rather than the deliberate lie it was. She mentioned how difficult it must be for me, at my age, to adapt to changing family dynamics. The entire letter painted me as an unreasonable old woman making a fuss over nothing. I placed the letter back in the drawer and went to my computer. It was time for more research. Over the next few hours, I dug deeper into Gloria's social media presence. There was a pattern. Every time Elaine and Robert made plans that didn't include her, Gloria would have some crisis or health scare. Last Easter, when they had planned to visit me, Gloria had suddenly needed emergency dental surgery. The summer before, when I had invited them to join me at a rental cottage by the lake, Gloria had experienced mysterious dizzy spells that required constant monitoring. I found post after post of Gloria subtly manipulating situations, always positioning herself as the victim while ensuring she got her way. And I found something else, something that made my blood run cold. Old photos of Elaine's birthday parties, school events, and graduations, all with Gloria prominently featured and me either absent or pushed to the background. It hadn't started with this Christmas betrayal. It had been happening for years, a slow, systematic campaign to edge me out of my daughter's life. And I had let it happen, always stepping back, always accommodating, always understanding. My doorbell rang again the next morning. This time it was Robert alone, looking nervous. "Margaret, can we talk? Just the two of us?" I let him in, curious about what he wanted to say without Elaine present. "I want to apologize again," he began, sitting stiffly on the edge of the sofa. "What we did was wrong. I should have stood up to my mother." "Yes, you should have," he nodded, looking down at his hands. "You need to understand something about my mother. She's always been controlling. She sees Elaine as the daughter she never had, and she gets jealous of your relationship with her. I'm aware of that, Robert. What I don't understand is why you and Elaine allow it." He sighed heavily. "It's complicated. My father left when I was young. She raised me alone, made a lot of sacrifices. She uses that history to make me feel guilty whenever I try to set boundaries. And she's very good at creating drama when she doesn't get her way. That doesn't explain why Elaine goes along with it. Elaine wants everyone to be happy. She hates conflict. My mother knows exactly how to exploit that." I considered his words. "So what now? Am I supposed to just forget what happened and move on?" "No, we need to make real changes. I've started seeing a therapist to help me deal with my mother's manipulation. I'm hoping Elaine will join me for couples counseling." For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a path forward after all, but it wouldn't be a quick or easy one. "I appreciate your honesty, Robert. It's a start." After he left, I found myself thinking about the family photos I'd discovered online, the ones where Gloria had systematically pushed me to the sidelines of my own daughter's life. The anger I'd been suppressing suddenly surged to the surface, hot and demanding. I picked up my phone and unblocked Elaine's number. "We need to talk," I texted. "Not just about Christmas, about everything." Her response came immediately. "When?" "Tomorrow. The cafe on Main Street. Noon." "I'll be there, thank you, Mom." I put the phone down and took a deep breath. It was time to reclaim my place in my daughter's life, not by being understanding or accommodating, but by standing firm and demanding the respect I deserved. It wouldn't be easy and it might get messy, but it was necessary. For both of us. I arrived at the cafe 20 minutes early, choosing a corner table that offered some privacy. The place held memories. Frank had proposed to me here 45 years ago, and I'd brought Elaine here for hot chocolate after school when she was young. The waitress, Darlene, had known me for decades and raised an eyebrow when I ordered coffee with a shot of espresso instead of my usual chamomile tea. Expecting a rough conversation? She asked. Something like that, I replied. Elaine arrived precisely at noon, her hair pulled back neatly, wearing the pearl earrings I'd given her for her 30th birthday. She looked nervous but composed. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. I nodded, waiting for Darlene to take Elaine's order and leave before speaking. I've been doing some research, I began, keeping my voice low and steady. Looking at old photos, social media posts, I've noticed a pattern, Elaine, and it didn't start with Christmas. Her eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? I mean, Gloria has been systematically pushing me out of your life for years. And you've been letting it happen. She started to protest, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. Every birthday, every holiday, every special occasion, she finds a way to make it about her. She creates emergencies and health scares whenever you make plans with me. And instead of recognizing the manipulation, you and Robert give in to it, every time. Elaine's face flushed. It's not that simple, Mom. Gloria she needs a lot of attention. And you give it to her at my expense. That's not fair, isn't it? I took a sip of my coffee, letting the bitterness ground me. When was the last time you stood up to her? When was the last time you chose me over her? Elaine looked down at her untouched latte. I try to balance everyone's needs. No, you cave to the person who makes the biggest fuss. And that's never been me, has it? I've always been understanding, accommodating, putting your happiness first. So you're saying this is my fault? I'm saying we both share responsibility for where we are now. Me for not speaking up sooner and you for consistently choosing the path of least resistance rather than doing what's right. Darlene refilled my coffee, giving us both a concerned look before moving away. The cafe had filled up with the lunch crowd, conversations buzzing around us. I never meant to hurt you, Elaine said, her voice small. I believe that, but intent doesn't change the impact. What do you want from me, Mom? I leaned forward. I want you to tell me why. Why lie about Christmas? Why not just tell me the truth? Elaine twisted her napkin in her hands. Gloria planned the whole thing as a surprise. She presented it as this amazing gift, all expenses paid. Robert was so excited, he hasn't had a real vacation in years. When I suggested we invite you too, Gloria said the package was already booked, exactly 4 people, and changing it would ruin everything. So you decided to lie instead of standing up for me. I told her we needed to be honest with you. She said you'd try to make us feel guilty about going, that you'd ruin the trip for everyone with your disappointment. And you believed that? I don't know what I believed. Elaine's voice cracked. Everything happened so fast. One minute we were planning Christmas at your house, the next Gloria was showing us pictures of this amazing resort in Maui. Robert was thrilled, the kids were excited, I felt trapped. So you took the easy way out. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I convinced myself it wasn't that bad, that I'd make it up to you later. But then when we got there, seeing everyone so happy while knowing you were alone, I felt terrible. I kept making excuses to go back to the hotel room to check my phone, hoping you'd call so I could hear your voice and know you were okay. But you never told me the truth. I was a coward. She wiped her eyes. I've been in therapy since we got back, twice a week. I'm trying to understand why I let Gloria manipulate me, why I put her feelings above yours. And what have you learned? Elaine took a deep breath. That I've spent my whole life trying to make everyone happy. That I hate conflict so much I'll do almost anything to avoid it. That I've been letting Gloria control our family because standing up to her feels impossible. It's not impossible, Elaine. It's just hard. I know that now. Robert and I have been talking about setting boundaries with her. He's finally seeing how toxic her behavior is. I studied my daughter's face, seeing both the child I raised and the woman she'd become. There was genuine remorse there, but also something new, a determination I hadn't seen before. The Hawaii trip wasn't fun, Mom, not for me. I felt guilty the whole time. And Gloria kept making these little comments about how you wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway, how you never liked to travel, how Christmas at your house was always so old-fashioned and boring. I flinched at the words. I defended you, Elaine continued. For the first time, I really stood up to her. I told her your Christmases were magical, that some of my happiest memories were in your house. We had a huge fight. Robert backed me up. She didn't speak to either of us for the last 2 days of the trip. And how did that feel? A small smile appeared through her tears. Terrifying and then strangely liberating. We sat in silence for a moment, the ambient noise of the cafe washing over us. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Mom. What I did was terrible, but I want you to know I'm working on myself, trying to be better, and I miss you so much. I considered her words carefully. The pain of Christmas was still raw, but beneath it was something deeper, a lifetime of moments where my daughter had faced the choice between pleasing others and standing by me. Too often she'd chosen wrong, but perhaps that could change. I need time, Elaine. This isn't just about Christmas. It's about years of patterns we've both fallen into. I can't just snap my fingers and make everything okay. I know, I'll wait as long as it takes, and I'll keep doing the work. We finished our coffee in a silence that felt, if not comfortable, at least less tense than before. As we were preparing to leave, Elaine hesitated. There's something else you should know. Gloria wants to have a family dinner this weekend. To, in her words, clear the air. Robert told her we needed to check with you first. What do you think I should do? She looked surprised at the question. I think you should do whatever feels right for you, Mom. If you're not ready to see her, that's completely understandable. It was a small thing, but significant, Elaine putting my feelings first instead of trying to broker peace at any cost. Tell Robert I'll think about it. Outside the cafe, Elaine hesitated before hugging me. I allowed it, feeling the familiar shape of my daughter in my arms, different now than when she was small but still essentially Elaine. I love you, Mom, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I love you too, I replied. That's never been in question. As I drove home, I felt both drained and oddly energized. The conversation had been difficult, but necessary. For the first time since seeing those Hawaii photos, I felt a flicker of hope that something good might eventually come from this painful situation. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. And that was a start. I decided against attending Gloria's dinner, not out of spite but self-preservation. Instead, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist named Dr. Winters, a woman in her 60s with a no-nonsense manner that reminded me of my mother. So your daughter lied to you about Christmas to go on vacation with her mother-in-law, she summarized after I explained the situation. And now you're trying to decide if and how to forgive her. Yes, though it's more complicated than that. Family always is. Tell me about your relationship with Elaine before this happened. I spent the next hour unpacking decades of history, how I'd raised Elaine alone after Frank died of a sudden heart attack, how I'd worked multiple jobs to ensure she had everything she needed, how I'd always put her first. It sounds like you were an excellent mother, Dr. Winters observed. Very self-sacrificing. I did what I had to do. And now you feel betrayed because Elaine didn't prioritize you the way you always prioritized her. Put so bluntly, it made me uncomfortable. I don't expect her to sacrifice everything for me. I just expected basic honesty. Dr. Winters nodded. That's entirely reasonable. But I'm wondering if there's something deeper here. You mentioned that Gloria has been gradually taking over your role in Elaine's life. How does that make you feel? Angry, hurt, replaced. Those are valid feelings. Have you expressed them to Elaine? I thought about our cafe conversation. Not exactly. I told her I was upset about the pattern of behavior, but not specifically that I felt replaced. That might be important to share. Now tell me about these new activities you've started. Dancing, painting, French lessons. That's quite a change for you. It's time I focused on my own life instead of just being Elaine's mother. I couldn't agree more. But I'm curious about the timing. Why now? The question caught me off guard. I suppose because Christmas showed me how easily I could be set aside. I realized I needed something that was just mine, that couldn't be taken away. Dr. Winters smiled. That's a healthy response to pain, Margaret. Creating a fuller life for yourself isn't just good for you, it will ultimately be good for your relationship with Elaine too. Healthier boundaries work both ways. By the time I left her office, I felt more centered than I had in weeks. I scheduled another appointment for the following week and drove home with a clearer sense of what I needed to do. That evening, I called Elaine. I've been thinking about Gloria's dinner invitation, I said. I'm not ready for that yet, but I would like to talk with you and Robert at my house tomorrow night. Of course, Mom, whatever you want. And Elaine, I want to be very clear. This needs to be just the three of us. If Gloria shows up or calls with an emergency, I'm done. There was a pause, then Elaine's voice, firm and clear. I understand, she won't be a factor, I promise. I spent the next day preparing not elaborate food or decorations, but organizing my thoughts and feelings. When Elaine and Robert arrived precisely on time, I led them to the living room where I'd arranged 3 chairs in a small circle. Thank you for coming, I began once we were seated. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've realized there are things I need to say and hear before we can move forward. Robert nodded encouragingly. We're listening, Margaret. I took a deep breath. First, I want to be clear about how deeply hurt I was by the Christmas deception. Not just because I was left alone, but because you both chose to lie to me rather than simply telling me the truth or standing up to Gloria. We understand, Elaine said softly. It was inexcusable. Second, I've realized this isn't an isolated incident. For years, I've watched Gloria systematically push me out of your lives, creating dramas and emergencies whenever you make plans with me. And I've watched you both give in to her manipulation time and again. Robert shifted uncomfortably. You're right, I've enabled my mother's behavior for far too long. I've also realized my part in this dynamic, I continued. I've been so determined to be the understanding, accommodating mother that I never established proper boundaries. I allowed myself to be pushed aside because I didn't want to seem demanding or difficult. Elaine looked surprised. Mom, you've always been the most supportive mother anyone could ask for, perhaps too supportive. I've allowed you both to take my presence and my feelings for granted. The three of us sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of the conversation. So where do we go from here? Robert finally asked. That's what we need to figure out together. I don't want to lose my relationship with either of you, but I can't continue as things have been. I need real change, not just apologies. Elaine leaned forward. We've been talking about that too, Mom. Robert and I have made some decisions about Gloria. She glanced at her husband, who nodded encouragingly. We're setting firm boundaries with her. No more giving in to her manipulations, no more last-minute emergencies dictating our plans. She's not going to like that, I observed. No, she's not, Robert agreed. She's already furious that we refused to bring you to her dinner. She said if you weren't willing to move past this, then maybe you were the problem. And what did you say to that? I asked. I told her she was wrong and that if she couldn't respect our boundaries and our relationship with you, then we would need to rethink our relationship with her. I raised an eyebrow, impressed by his firmness. How did she take that? Not well, Elaine admitted. She's threatened to cut Robert out of her will, to never speak to us again, all the usual tactics. But this time we're standing firm. It won't be easy, I warned. People like Gloria don't change overnight, if they change at all. We know, Robert said. That's why we've started therapy, both individually and as a couple. We're committed to breaking these patterns, not just for your sake, Mom, but for our own mental health too. I looked at both of them, seeing genuine resolve in their expressions. It wasn't enough to erase the hurt of Christmas, but it was a start. I appreciate your honesty and your efforts, I said. But I need you to understand something. I won't be taken for granted again. I'm building my own life now, with activities and friendships that don't revolve around being your mother or Robert's mother-in-law. I will always love you, Elaine, but our relationship needs to be one of mutual respect, not just me accommodating whatever works best for everyone else. Elaine's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the helpless tears of our cafe meeting. These seemed more like tears of recognition, perhaps even relief. I want that too, Mom. I want us to have a healthier relationship. I want to know you as a person, not just as my mother. Then let's start there, I suggested. Let's get to know each other as the adults we are now, not just the roles we've been playing. We talked for hours that night, more honestly than we had in years. Elaine shared her struggles with always trying to please everyone, her fear of conflict that stemmed from the years after Frank died, when she'd tried so hard to be perfect, so I wouldn't have one more thing to worry about. Robert opened up about growing up with Gloria's manipulations, how he'd learned early that keeping her happy was easier than facing her disapproval. And I shared too, about how lonely I'd been since Frank died, How I'd poured everything into being a good mother because it was the only identity I had left. How I'd been afraid to build a life for myself because I feared losing my connection to Elaine. By the time they left, something had shifted between us. The hurt wasn't gone, and trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight, but there was a foundation now for something new, something potentially stronger than what we'd had before. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a curious lightness. For the first time in decades, I wasn't defined solely by being Elaine's mother or Frank's widow. I was Margaret, a woman taking painting classes and learning to waltz and studying French. A woman with boundaries and expectations, and a voice that deserved to be heard. It wasn't the path I'd expected my life to take, but standing there in my quiet house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time: anticipation for what might come next. The summer brought unexpected joys. My painting instructor convinced me to enter one of my still lifes in the community art show. It won no prizes, but seeing my name on a small canvas displayed in the local library gave me a quiet thrill. In my dance class, Walter and I progressed from awkward box steps to a respectable waltz, and he invited me to coffee afterward, an invitation I accepted with only mild trepidation. Elaine called regularly, our conversations evolving from cautious updates to genuine exchanges. She and Robert remained committed to their therapy, and their boundaries with Gloria had held firm despite her increasingly dramatic attempts to regain control. She showed up at our house at midnight last week, Elaine told me during one call, claimed she was having chest pains and needed to go to the emergency room. Was she actually ill? I asked. The doctors found nothing wrong, just like the last 3 times. Robert told her that if she was truly concerned about her health, she should call an ambulance next time, not drive 30 minutes to our house in the middle of the night. How did she take that? She cried, said we didn't love her anymore. Robert stayed calm, drove her home, and reminded her that we'd be happy to see her during normal hours if she called first. Then he left, even though she was still crying on her front porch. I couldn't hide my surprise. That must have been difficult for him. It was, Elaine agreed. But he said it actually felt good to follow through on our boundaries. And the strangest thing happened, Mom. She called the next day and apologized. It was the first genuine apology I've ever heard from her. That is progress for all of you. We have a long way to go, but it feels like we're finally moving in the right direction. Our relationship was healing too, slowly but steadily. Elaine and Robert came for dinner every few weeks, and I attended their daughter's piano recital, sitting proudly in the audience without any drama from Gloria, who had been relegated to a seat several rows back. In June, Michael and his wife visited from Australia with their new baby, a sweet, round-faced girl they'd named Frances after my late husband. Having all of us together in my house again was healing in a way I hadn't anticipated. The empty spaces filled with new voices, new memories being made. On the last night of their visit, after the baby was asleep and Robert had gone home to check on their teenagers, Michael, Elaine, and I sat in the backyard watching fireflies rise from the grass. I never thought we'd be here again, Michael said softly. After Christmas, I was worried we'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. We nearly did, I admitted. But sometimes things need to break before they can be rebuilt properly. Elaine reached for my hand in the darkness. I'm so sorry for what we put you through, Mom. I wish I could go back and do it differently. I don't, I said, surprising myself with the realization. If Christmas hadn't happened the way it did, we might have continued in the same unhealthy patterns forever. Sometimes you need a wake-up call. As summer turned to fall, I found myself looking ahead to the holiday season with complex emotions. When Elaine tentatively asked about Christmas plans during an October visit, I was prepared. I'd like to host Christmas Eve dinner here, I said. Just us, no Gloria. You can see her on Christmas Day if you want. Elaine and Robert exchanged a look. Actually, Robert said, we've been thinking about starting a new tradition. Christmas morning at our house with just our immediate family, then Christmas dinner wherever you'd like, Mom. Gloria can have Boxing Day. She won't like that, I observed. No, she won't, Elaine agreed. But these are our boundaries now, and she's learning to respect them. Mostly. When December arrived, I decorated my house with the same care as always, but with a lighter heart. The ornaments and garlands were no longer a desperate attempt to preserve traditions, but a genuine celebration. I even bought a few new decorations, including a beautiful glass star for the top of the tree that caught the light in ways that reminded me of Hawaiian beaches. On Christmas Eve, my kitchen filled with familiar scents and sounds as Elaine helped me prepare dinner while Robert and their teenagers set the table. There was an ease between us that had been missing for years, perhaps even decades. Mom, Elaine said as we worked side by side rolling out pie crust, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Would you consider joining us for a vacation next summer? We're thinking about renting a lake house for 2 weeks. Michael and his family might fly in for part of it too. That sounds lovely, I said. What about Gloria? She's not invited, Robert answered, coming in to refill water glasses. This is just for our family. The simple statement, delivered without guilt or apology, spoke volumes about how much had changed in a year. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. I woke early, made coffee, and sat by my window watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered yard in shades of pink and gold. The house was quiet, but it was a peaceful solitude, not a lonely one. I had plans for later, dinner at Elaine and Robert's, then an evening gathering with my new friends from dance class. My phone chimed with a message from Elaine. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Can't wait to see you later. I love you." I smiled and typed back, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. I love you too." As I sat enjoying the stillness of the morning, I thought about the journey of the past year. From the devastation of discovering Elaine's betrayal to the slow, sometimes painful process of rebuilding trust and establishing healthier relationships. It hadn't been easy, and there had been many moments when it would have been simpler to fall back into old patterns, to be the accommodating mother who asked for nothing and accepted whatever scraps of attention came her way. But the harder path had proven worth it. Not just in my relationship with Elaine and Robert, but in the fuller life I'd created for myself. Next week, Walter was taking me to a New Year's Eve dance at the community center. My French was improving steadily, enough that I was considering a trip to Paris in the spring. In my latest painting, a winter landscape had earned genuine praise from my instructor, who suggested I might consider selling some of my work at the local farmers market. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I hadn't been expecting anyone this early. When I opened the door, I found Gloria standing on my porch, a small, carefully wrapped package in her hands. "Margaret," she said, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. "May I come in for just a moment?" I hesitated, then stepped back to allow her entry. We hadn't spoken directly since before Christmas last year. All communication filtered through Elaine and Robert. "I won't stay long," she promised, remaining in the entryway. "I know you're going to Robert and Elaine's later, and I wanted to give you this before you went." She handed me the package. It was heavier than it looked. "You can open it now if you'd like," she said, sounding uncharacteristically uncertain. I unwrapped it carefully to find a small, ornate silver frame. Inside was a photo I'd never seen before, Elaine as a young girl sitting on my lap, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. "Robert found it when we were cleaning out some old albums," Gloria explained. "It reminded me of how much Elaine has always loved you. And I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for my part in what happened last year. And for many things before that." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity, but found only tiredness and what appeared to be genuine regret. "Thank you for the photo," I said. "It was thoughtful of you to bring it." She nodded, seeming to understand that forgiveness would not be offered so easily. "Well, I should go. Merry Christmas, Margaret." "Merry Christmas, Gloria." After she left, I placed the framed photo on my mantel beside the wooden turtle Elaine had brought me from Hawaii. Two reminders of a painful time that had ultimately led to healing. Later, as I drove to Elaine and Robert's house, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. The pain of betrayal had never fully disappeared, but it had transformed into something else, something that had ultimately strengthened rather than weakened my relationships. Elaine met me at the door, her face lighting up when she saw me. Behind her, I could see the table set for dinner, hear her children's laughter from the living room, smell the familiar scents of our family recipes. "Merry Christmas, Mom," she said, wrapping me in a warm embrace. "I'm so glad you're here." "So am I replied and meant it with all my heart. As we walked into the house together, I realized that the greatest gift of the past year hadn't been the new activities or friendships, though those were precious. The greatest gift had been finding my voice, establishing my boundaries, and discovering that true love, the kind that lasts, is built on honesty, respect, and the courage to stand firm even when it would be easier to give in. It had taken a betrayal on a Hawaiian beach to teach me that lesson, but now, back in the heart of my family with new understanding between us, I was finally at peace.